How to become a high-paid back engineer in the UK. My name is Isaac, previous CTO of a funded startup, and I run the checkout team at Pretty Little Thing. In traditional web service architecture, you have clients and you have servers. So front end, back end. Front end is everything that you, the user, will interact with. If I'm on my phone and I go on Twitter, this is the front end, this is the client, my phone's the client. I make a request to the backend and it sends me my feed, my tweets, everything like that. As such, backend development is very much to do with security, management of data, sending data between the client and the server, managing all that, and business logic. So this is very important. So what is it like being a backend engineer and how is it different than being a front-end engineer? Being a front-end engineer is almost completely about cosmetics. When you are looking at the Twitter app or any app or website, it is very important that the pixels are done right, the UX is good, everything's clean, it works well, the experience. The backend, we don't really care. Your mentality needs to shift more into what works instead of what seems aesthetic. Backend is all about system regulation and whether the ultimate outcome that the customer came for is or isn't being satisfied. It's kind of binary, either works or it doesn't. An example of this, I used to be a barback at a bar, which means at the front everyone's serving cocktails, give everyone drinks. Behind them, someone has to get the bottles from the cellar, the various different liquors, pull them out, and then actually stack the bar with these liquors so bartenders can use it. The front of the bar, it was very pretty, very aesthetic, marble floors, very beautiful lighting behind the bottles, shiny, everything looks nice. When they do the little cocktails with the little fruit on the top, the little serviette, when they put out and serve it, the back of the bar was it was concrete floor, everything was messy, steel tables, but they don't care because it's back of the house. The customers don't see it and they don't need to, they don't care. They just need to know that their drinks get served in reasonable time. And this is kind of similar for web services. Now, obviously, if you are the backend developer, you should take pride in what you're doing and make it clean and organized. But the objective is not for it to be clean for the sake of being clean. It's so that you can do your job properly and efficiently. With the front end, things can be kind of ambiguous. If you get a design and it doesn't quite match, it's not pixel perfect, or maybe the colors are a little bit off, you might be able to get away with it. Back-end development, if you did not make something that fits the requirements that were sent, it doesn't work and it could have dire consequences for the business. So it's very serious that you actually understand and treat system regulation with the rigidity that it needs. An example of this, like on an e-commerce website, if the button is a little bit bigger than it needs to be, or the fonts are too large, it's kind of permissible and it's not a critical error. On the back end, let's say you have a number and you round it wrong and you charge the customer something that's an inaccurate amount, that has dire consequences. Even if to the customer it only adds 5 pence, it can actually stop the payment gateway working because the payment gateways are quite precise on the number that comes back. I could also completely mess things downstream in terms of the company's tax system because the numbers are going to be wrong. At the end of the year, they're going to be like, oh, why do we have more or less money? They're not going to know where it came from. It actually is quite serious. A little bit dramatic, but case in point, it's a lot more rigid in terms of requirements. The backend is also very much prone to change. Now, the front end does kind of change, but once you have something that the customers use, you don't really need to adjust it unless there's a new feature. The backend, however, it's always these constant little optimizations or maybe like security improvements or business logic changing, which happens so much. For example, if you think of how on an e-commerce website, you may have like a voucher offer. On the front end, it's quite easy. You put in a code and then it tells you got 20% off. On the backend, let's say you want to add like a new voucher system, you want to add a new offer, there's always things being added or updated to, like previously maybe it's just the price, but now, we want to affect the shipping. And the front end isn't really going to change this because it just reflects the data, but the back end will have all these different changes on like, if this voucher code set the shipping to 20% off only in the US, or there's a lot of logic that goes into it, and as such, there's a lot of tampering. So the back end, one of the reasons it needs to be clean and organized is because the likelihood is it's going to be changed a lot, which kind of goes to the final point of this section of what to really expect from back end, which is optimization and efficiency. It really is important to understand what you're doing as a system, and it's not something that's consumed, it's something that information goes through, and that is the important thing, is the input and the output. It's not what users see. Like the example that I said with the bar, it could be one of the prettiest bars in the world. The bartenders are all lovely in the little waistcoats and little bow ties, and the back of the bar, it's a mess. But as long as the information goes through, the bottles come, customers are served, everyone's happy and the money flows. That is what you need to think of as the backend developer. I just want to say as a caveat, by the way, this is not me saying use bad practices because they do come back to bite you. I remember working in a startup and everyone's kind of working on new things that they're having to learn, they might not have worked with before. And as such, you make mistakes, that's great. And I remember the marketing guys, I was kind of jealous of them because they can actually think, right, the last 2-3 campaigns didn't work, that's fine. Today's a new day, we're doing a new campaign. This next month, we're experimenting with something new. That's great. I, as the developer, actually had to deal with the last 9 months of things that I didn't think were good, and I have to build on top of it. As a developer, you're constantly working with what you previously did. You don't get to just clean the slate. So do be aware of how important, trying to keep a clean practice is. And you won't get it perfect first time. That's cool. But bear in mind, the more indifferent you are when setting these things up and the lazier you are, later on, someone's going to have to pick it up, and it's probably going to be you. So these are kind of the mental cornerstones of what it is to become a good backend engineer. So how exactly do we build practices around improving these things? Higher reliance on testing and precision. So as I said with the e-commerce example, where if a number gets rounded wrong, it breaks everything downstream. Very important to actually understand how to write good tests that can catch these things, especially if it's like more awkward numeric things that humans are quite bad at. There's various different programming approaches you could use. I personally am a big fan of functional programming because it makes it incredibly easy to unit test and therefore break into smaller pieces and isolate what the potential problem could be in smaller parts. There's integration testing, end-to-end testing. End-to-end testing is a little bit more with front-end as well, to be honest. But the point is, if you want to become a better backend engineer, I would highly recommend you understand testing a little bit more. Automation and pipelines. So in the same way that I said, the great thing about testing, especially for awkward numeric backendy things, is humans aren't good at it. Humans are really bad at automation and pipeline tasks because it's quite monotonous. It's the minutiae of small details waiting for things to be done. If you get better at pipelines, you will remove a lot of processes and you actually would build tests into pipelines. So in the same way that you are building a code system, you need to also think about your development process as a system too. So you put code into it and it gets deployed to the user. In between, there's a lot of things that could go wrong. And building pipelines that do unit tests, integration tests, even just the actual deployment process, which having a machine do it consistently means it's less likely to error. And therefore, if you did it every time, you probably make a mistake at some point. Removing these processes, again, it's what it's all about. Being able to create processes out of development is just as important as the development itself. So being a backend engineer really is just a good system regulator. Another thing is frequent small changes. You don't want to be doing big chunks of work at once because it can affect so many different areas. You want small incremental changes and just constantly throw them out. Now, these are kind of relying on each other. So you actually need a good automation pipeline or a development process to be able to do this. Because if there is a problem, you'll need to revert small things at a time, and the amount of potential damage a single change could cause is massively reduced. So less of an impact when something goes wrong and much easier to change it. These would be my recommendations if I was speaking to myself before I got into backend development. There's a lot more opportunity for growth as well, because I think if you really can come to grips with the system aspect and become good at systems, it really does open the door for project managers, system architects, because you understand how to allocate pieces of the puzzle together and understand what constraints are beneficial and which ones are going to hamper you in the long run. And that's backend, that's the bread and butter. I hope this video was useful for you. However, if you also know someone that's maybe considering getting into backend or want to improve their backend skills, or they're just like, yo, this job I'm in is really scary, please send them this video to give them a better insight into what they can do. Thanks, guys.